Is your website showing a version of you that's 5 years old? Well, let's talk about it today. Today's guest is on a mission to cure something I think a lot of entrepreneurs are secretly struggling with: website shame. Angelica Hesse is the founder of Brand Your Light, where she helps women entrepreneurs create an online presence that actually reflects who they are today, not who they were 3 or 5 years ago. With more than 20 years as a graphic designer and solopreneur, Angelica combines beautiful branding with smart sales strategies so her clients can attract the people who immediately say, "Yep, that's my person." What I love about Angelica is that she believes your business grows when you're willing to be seen. And we're going to dive into that, I promise you. And somehow, when she's not helping entrepreneurs shine online, she's singing opera, playing pickleball, or hosting dinner parties. This is going to be a fun one. Angelica, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Andy. I love that very warm welcome. It was delightful.
Oh, I'm so
So good
excited.
to be here.
I'm so excited to have this conversation because what I remember is, when we had our initial conversation, you and I had a really, really important, powerful discussion about being seen and what that means in terms of highlighting what your gifts are. How is it that we as business owners, solopreneurs, entrepreneurs can really shine the light on our gifts without it being braggy, right?
You know, over and over, I run into this. I work mostly with women, and whether we see it or not, so many women have been throughout their lives discouraged from saying good things about themselves. We have nasty inner critics. We pick apart every little detail of our bodies, and we don't feel like we can say, "Hey, I did that good." Dudes do that. They do it all the time.
Yeah, yeah,
They did
absolutely.
something good, they tell everybody about it. And somehow women have gotten it in their heads that speaking positively about themselves is braggy.
Yeah.
And it can be, but I don't know very many women who ever are truly braggy.
Yeah. And I think one of the
Hmm.
harder things that we have acquiesced to, one of the phrases that always just grinds my gears is, "I'm my own worst critic."
Hmm.
Why are we criticizing ourselves to begin with, right? And I think that it reflects a lot in the language that's used on websites.
Hmm. When you say that, what you saying on people's own websites?
Yeah, absolutely. Because when you're seeing their website, it's like they want to say how well they did, but it doesn't really land. And it comes across as just like, this is what I offer. And
Right.
it's not like, I did this and it's super awesome. Right. And it's more muted because, well, why would it be braggy? Why would it highlight what my magic? Right.
I think there's also, I'll come back to the like website piece, but there's also a thing where we're too close to ourselves. I've come to realize more and more that the vast majority of people don't see themselves well. Like self-awareness is actually a thing that has to be fairly hard won. And, I've had the experience working with clients of, sort of asking them a bunch of questions and then, synthesizing it in my mind. And the gems come out, like I see them really quickly. And I think most of us do. We see it with our friends, we see it with other business people. We see their magic, as I call it. But we're not super good at seeing that about ourselves. So sometimes like the braggy piece is part of it, and sometimes it's just that I think the things that we do really, really well, almost innately, we don't realize how great they are because they're easy for us, right? And oftentimes people are offering something of service to the world that is the thing they just know how to do, and they don't see it as that incredible.
Yeah.
And it takes spelling out my superpower is whatever. Actually, I have that on, I think it's the promo page for my masterclass that, myself and whoever I partner with, her superpower is. And that it ultimately is what makes us hire someone or want to be friends with someone is
Yeah.
like, oh, they are so amazing in this particular way that's different than I'm amazing. And we're
Yeah.
magnetized by that.
Yeah. And you bring up a really good point about being too close to see your own magic, but seeing other people's. And so when you're synthesizing that, how do you really bring that out for people in the work that you do? How is it that you
Mm.
begin to highlight that for someone?
Mm-hmm. So I do not actually write copy for my clients. So I do want to be clear on that. But I talk a lot about content because it's a teachable piece of my area of expertise. And it's an important one that a lot of people are missing. But I do some sort of top level strategic work with folks where, I help like hold up the mirror and say, this is what's incredible about you. Like this is the thing you want to lean into when you're writing your copy
Yeah.
or when you're working with a copywriter. And then I do it as a designer. A lot of that gets captured in color.
Yes.
So it's not just what they're good at, but it's like the particular way they show up. The vibe, as the word is, the sort of hit that you get from someone, the energy they bring into the room. I try to capture that in color, with their branding, with the look and feel of the site.
Yeah.
So that it can a little bit simulate that experience someone would have in the room with them before they're there.
Yeah, there's a like a lot of psychology that goes behind color theory and, the feeling that you want to get when somebody steps into a room or looks at a website or has builds a logo. So, do you find that there are any sort of rules of thumb in specific industries that should
Mm.
follow with like, oh, avoid this or, stay closer to that or any sort of rules of thumb that people can take away?
Mm. Gosh. I feel like there's not a cut and dried answer to this. So there are colors that particular industries use because we associate them with qualities we connect to those industries. We see lots of blue in corporate because blue is trustworthy. And sort of blues and greens in healthcare because those are healing colors. We had a phase about 10 years ago where every single anything that was marketed to women, including many women's own brands, was some version of pink and gray. And then it was millennial pink. And then it was so low contrast you couldn't read anything on Instagram, but it had this like fluffy vibe thing going on. Um, that's going away, which I'm glad to see. So the challenge, so you can go two ways, right? You can lean into the thing that speaks your industry, and that's immediately recognizable. Like we see lots of the, green and sort of golden brown, deer brown kind of thing in all of the wellness space. But at a certain point, if everyone's doing it, you become decidedly unmemorable. So you can lean into your industry or whatever the expected mood is of what you're offering, or you could be the rebel, the one
Mm.
who does something totally different, the one who does healthcare with hot pink. um you know and I've seen it done really successfully.
Yeah, I'm immediately I think of there's an attorney who everything is hot pink. And like
Mhm.
that's her thing, is that like she shows up to court in
Yeah,
hot pink suits.
love it.
And it's like her thing, but like, then it doesn't diminish the message because she's so good at what she
Yeah,
does. She like
yeah,
hones in on that.
yeah, and it's wildly distinctive.
Yeah,
I'm sure she
absolutely.
walks in a courtroom and they're like, oh. It's like, don't imagine someone is wearing hot pink in a courtroom who doesn't know that they're a badass.
Oh, absolutely. 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 The confidence you have to have for that. So,
Yeah,
okay.
I know an attorney locally who is so good at her job, and she goes in and skewers men who are the opposition, just skewers them in court. But, she does it without a lot of noise, but I can imagine this woman has a similar ability to.
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
So you talk about, really leaning into the color in terms of the
Hmm.
industry versus yourself and what you bring, your aura. Do you
Hmm.
find that you know, making the color mistakes has that big of an impact?
Hmm. Yeah, so because I am working primarily with solos, I my tendency is to brand them very much around who they are. So there will be some of like what it needs to look like for what you're offering and sort of the overall feel of that. But really, who is this particular person? Let's use your example. This lawyer versus the other 10 lawyers' websites you were on. I think that can be really powerful when we are an individual person, back to the I'm working with her
Yeah.
that I've taken to saying. I've always been someone that prefers to hire individuals rather than sort of organizations where it's a little nameless. And some of that is I need to like the person I'm working with.
Yeah.
And a few years back, I was shopping around for a therapist, never actually hired one. And I was on a whole bunch of websites. These are great examples actually of the sort of not what to do, not of the what not to do. The vast majority listed the kinds of things they work on, which was largely the same 10 problems over and over, depression, anxiety, whatever. Perhaps some of the modalities or training things they worked with, it was mostly bullets. There often wasn't a ton of information. And then, sometimes a bio that was pretty academic and factual. And then the question really was just like who was available for bookings, right? But there wasn't a lot that made one stand out from the other. And then I stumbled on one or two where they told a story and like a sense of like how they work and their values and all of that shone through, and it was very intentional. One of them was a man who I actually spoke with briefly, and we were trying to schedule. And it turns out he was stepping into coaching, like he was transitioning his way there.
Yeah.
So his availability didn't work for me. And I now, like, I get it now. It's like, oh, he was leaning into this idea of really marketing a higher ticket service and going in different directions. So he had started to do that on his site. But it really stood out among, 50, 100, whatever different people in my community offering the same thing.
Yeah. I
And,
think,
and I think it was nicely designed too, if I remember.
yeah, the art of storytelling has
Hmm.
been very prevalent lately. Now it's like you're marketing to, marketing yourself and what and everything you do, right? It's like, what is
Hmm.
your story? What are you doing? Like, how did you get here? Which is a great segue into asking you, how did you get into doing this?
I I think I have a couple of origin stories, I suppose. Um, Early on in life, I didn't fully know this at the time. I discovered, and looking back, I can name it, that I'm not a good employee,
Mm,
which doesn't mean I'm not good at my job. I was and could be good at a lot of different things. Notice I have learned how to brag.
yeah.
Um, I think at a certain point in life, you see these things and it's not a brag. It's sort of a factual thing, right? That we are simply discouraged from naming. So I would go in and I would be really excited about the like learning and the ramp up phase where I had no idea what I was doing yet in the job. And I'd be like focused and all in and learning quickly because I love learning. And then it would get into the routine stage of the job. And I would get a little bored and I would start sitting on my hands and I probably didn't need the whole day to do whatever it was. And then I became, be 5 minutes late or whatever it was. And that got me in trouble with HR
Yeah.
regularly, you know, as it would. So I jumped ship into self-employment in my late 20s, like just a few years into my career. I do have a degree in design. How'd I wind up in design? I thought I was going to be a like civil rights lawyer, a social I think it was sociology, but what I really meant was social work. I didn't know the difference yet, or an actor singer. Those were the original plans. Design, I always drew since I was little. It's a very rambling story, but we're going with it. Yeah, apparently like 5 or 6 year old me always had a stack of paper on I think I don't know, this is the dining table or the kids' table that it had come home from my dad's med school lab where people would print out drafts of their papers and then reprint new drafts. And so these were printed on one side and blank on the other, and he'd bring home a big old stack and just leave it there. And the story is that I would just be going about my day, playing whatever. I'd walk by the table, stop, draw a picture, and then go about my day. And so this was just a thing I did as a little kid. Um, and I grew up in a school where art was just integrated into what we did every day, Waldorf school. Yeah, so design was this sort of aha moment after I'd left theater school, realizing that wasn't working at that time, and was like, what do I do now? And I was late 90s, hand creating a brochure for my mother's massage practice. And this little light bulb went off. Oh, I could be a graphic designer. Still don't know how I knew what a graphic designer was. Yeah, so that's how I wound up in design school. My early networking, once I jumped my job and wrote a business plan with help from an SBA, borrowed, what was then a sizable amount of money and said, I'm going to work for myself. I had no idea what I was doing. But I wound up in a women's chapter of a local chamber of commerce. So
Hmm.
my earliest networking circle was women, some of them already also solo entrepreneurs this is like right around 2000. So that was like not a thing everyone did yet. Um, yeah, and so that's where it started. The recent focus where I hated websites back then.
Hmm.
Hated doing them. They didn't hold still. They changed shape all the time. You couldn't pick your fonts. Like it was a designer's nightmare. Yeah. But fast forward to now and the tech is so different. Like it allows real design and it allows real design with relatively little coding.
Hmm.
I can code a bit, but I do a lot of it visually. Um, and with this focus more recently, not just on women entrepreneurs, but people who are following something that lights them up.
Yeah.
And I see this more in women in business than in men. There's There's this tendency that a lot of men come to business from, I want to make money. What can I do that makes money? Valid reason to start a business. A lot of women come to it from, there's this thing I want to offer to the world, and maybe I can get paid for it too. And I think a really good business does both, right? It really is serving and it's making its owner good money. And I think the challenge sometimes from the two ends is which side gets neglected more.
So I absolutely love that story because you can hear, even from a very young age, how you really were a designer. Like,
Mm,
the artist just coming out naturally, during the course of your day, right? And I think that like people who run the most effective business, it's been something that's been with them for a very long time.
mm,
We don't just stumble into a career that we love and it's just like, yeah, like there weren't hints of it
mm,
throughout their entire life that this thing was going to happen. So you can see the little drops of hints throughout
mhm,
your life that it was, kind of coming. Even if you thought you were going to be the lawyer, even if you thought you were going to be, the social worker, it was still like in the background, still playing.
mhm.
What part of the business now is it that lights you up the most?
That lights me up the most. Oh, it really is my clients. Like I said, I've zoned in on people who are excited about what they're doing, and I also need to be excited about what they're doing. There are industries I won't touch, for ethical reasons. And they tend not to be solopreneurs, tobacco, firearms, things like that. Um, the people I'm getting to work with, like one, they're delightful humans, and two, they're doing something really great in the world. And I want to light that up. I want it to be bigger. Like I want people to know about them and often become their cheerleaders after we work together and their referral partners. Um, yeah, and it's interesting what you were saying, like the creating and creating beauty has been a through thread in my life. I sometimes say beauty is a moral value for me. Like I'm personally offended when something is made and it's not made beautifully.
Oh, okay.
And America's kind of bad about that in general. We're like, let's make it cheap. Um, but I have never considered myself an artist with the capital A. I don't have that. There's something inside me burning to get out thing that what I call true artists have.
Yeah.
It's much more a channel thing, you know, and as a singer of classical music, that's also the case. Like that's something really beautiful created by someone else that I get to channel. And I think the same thing happens as a designer. Really, what I'm doing is figuring my client out and expressing them. Because I feel like I'm not going to write a book. Like I'm not that person. I don't think. Yeah, so I do. I get excited about it. And I work in tight containers with people. So I kind of get to nerd out and deep dive with a new person every week or two.
That's amazing.
Really
And
fun.
I think channeling, what it is that your clients is going, because you're right. And I love that you brought up the musical piece of it. Cause to me, like I can understand, I'm not the composer. I'm the pianist.
I'm not a singer, songwriter.
Like
No.
ah, I was in tech for over a decade and I could not write a piece of code to save my life.
Mm,
But if you hand me the most complex code, I can tell you what it's doing. I can read it, I can interpret it, and I can,
fix
tell
it.
you, hey, yeah, exactly. I can debug it. Like, hey, this
Yeah.
is missing. Like, I'm very good at that. But the creation of it for me was like never the thing. Like, I could not do it. And
Mhm.
so helping people to bridge that gap from what is it that I do and how can I project that out into the world with my website? How can I put out, what I'm trying to do, what I love, the things that really are important to me and, share that with the world, and then having somebody interpret that seems like a pretty in-depth process that you've got to like get into my brain to like extract all of that. Would that be correct?
Yeah, you know, a few years ago I was doing a much more in-depth, like it wasn't even discovery. It was I do still hand this workbook to people for branding, but I tell them to kind of do the pieces that connect for you because it was like a whole journaling process. Um, I do a more streamlined version of that, but you know, I do ask things like, you know, what was your like personal story? What was your education story? Just because there are sometimes nuggets in there that connect through or just that make this person unique in an interesting way. That can be this, you know, they can be the seeds of a brand or they can be, you know, threads I encourage them to write about. You asked how I do this. Yeah, so I have my clients because different people communicate differently too. Like first kind of journal this stuff and then I read it and we have a depending how in depth the particular process is I'm doing, we may have a conversation about that as well, where I ask more questions and just get to hear them talk about themselves in a less filtered way. You know, I find some folks dig up the jewels well when they write because they have time to self reflect, and other people just self censor while they write and like tell me the polished, like, this is what I should say because I'm in business rather than the way they would tell me if we just talked about their life.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I found both are useful.
Yeah, and that goes back to the what's expected of us, right? It's like what is it that we want to put out into the world versus what do we believe needs to be put out into the world? And I think that there's a massive difference between the two
Mhm.
because what we want to put out in the world is purely coming from ourselves, but the what we expect we need to put out into the world comes with, society, family, experience. Like, what are the things that, the internet is telling us that we
Right.
need to do versus how can we be authentic in that projection of our businesses?
Yeah, and there's a masking that happens, not in the neurodiverse sense, but in the I want to hide sense. Um, I think especially at the beginning, this I need to look official, I need to look experienced, I need to look like a company that does solopreneurs a disservice because it hides the yes, her, this unique person I want to say yes to part. Um, a lot of people, some people purchase by just a referral, one person, they talk to them, they like them, they go. Some people do the I'm going to ask for recommendations and vet 10 people. And so at that vetting stage, someone who's hiding behind generic and official is going to get lost, generally speaking. There's also there's been a shift in how just overall like what goes on websites has shifted in the time I've been in the industry. In the very, very early days, which was still the era where business was marketed through brochures. Remember the trifolds?
Yep,
Everyone had a
absolutely.
trifold and a business card. Like that was the core of your marketing package. Now maybe you have a business card. I still haven't printed mine um in recent years. And now it's a website. And originally websites went up just like brochures. They had a bulleted list of services. They had a boring corporate who we are and how long we've been here. And that stuck for a long time. And I actually still see a lot of so-called marketing companies doing this when they put up, especially cheap starter sites for people.
Mhm.
And I'm thinking the generic we solve all your marketing problems marketing companies that just kind of they do everything and none of it terribly well. So I see those sites coming out of that. I think they work for some of the local businesses that are, selling sort of a commodity service like plumbing or, something where you're just looking for the closest place. Though even there, a lot could be improved by being more distinctive. So what's shifted is that increasingly websites want to start the sales process, right? And I teach this in the master class I do right now. So briefly, just the speaking to your client's pain point, speaking to their desires and wishes, speaking to how you can solve that for them, asking for the sale. So that's a core of how I coach my clients to structure their copy is so that they're really very client focused, not the vendor, not the the entrepreneur themselves. A lot more you language and sort of talking directly to their potential client, even though they're not in the room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, and I feel like a lot more.
Mm,
So
mm,
just FYI, my business card is a
mm.
QR code to my website. It's like it has the name of my business and then like just go to my website because all the info is there. Um, but I feel like more and more now they're like landing pages. Now it's
Mm.
definitely that like just one like unless you're selling multiple things, right? It's like just this is my service, this is what it is, and like you're right that the flow. And
Yep.
it's very different because I remember websites having like an about me set like page and it would have the like but now everything's on that like first page. It's like this is your chance because there's so many websites. It's just like how can you make yourself distinctive? And I think from what I'm understanding is that it has to be authentic to you. It has to be true to who you are. It's not can't just be AI slop these days.
It can be, but it's not going to work as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Um,
the AI is interesting because I mean, I don't even really get into what it does graphics wise because I don't know, it's all polished and so generic. But the same is with the copy,
yeah,
right? Like it's polished, and we used to think polished was what we wanted for business, but it's like also the same now that the polish does nothing for you. And there's a sense that the trend with actually graphics is going to go much more raw, Instagram stories kind of raw
yeah,
in the future to actually communicate that it's real,
yeah.
which I think it'll be great. It'll be refreshing.
And one of the things that I've even noticed is that going live on YouTube, I get so many views that
Uh,
because people, I think, are really craving that realness.
right.
So being able to provide that, especially in something as challenging as like getting your website to be authentic, I think is really such an amazing service. And so I love, Angelica, if you could share, what projects do you got going on? Like, how can people reach you? Like,
Mm.
let us know, how we can work with you.
I am on LinkedIn. I'm quite active on Facebook actually. And I grudgingly I grudgingly exist on Instagram, but I'm less active there. That may change. I'm in a new coaching program and may be getting some fires lit under me. I will be. I know I will be on a number of fronts. Um, the so I do about every 2 months I self-host a masterclass called Turning Website Visitors into Clients. I usually co-host that with a copywriter. So the sort of tagline or the subtitle on that is Design and Content Strategies Business Owners Need in Today's Economy. And that goes into what I just touched on, which is how do we start the sales process on your site so that by the time people talk to you, they're actually starting to say yes already. Makes your discovery calls a lot more fun. Yeah, so that's a free master class, and you do have the link for that in the show notes.
Yep.
Which I do roughly every 2 months. That's a great way to come in and get to know my brain a little more. I offer something I call a website success map, which is that's my free offer, and it's actually part of the workbook I do with my website clients. So it's kind of a inventorying what's working on your site and what's not, and how you want to restructure it, and lots of check boxes for all the things you might have forgotten that you need to be thinking about. So that can be really cool for calming down the chaos in your head about like, I know things are wrong with my site, I don't know where to start. It also gives you clarity that will allow you to actually get a better, more accurate quote right out of the gate if you're talking to a designer, or to start to roadmap kind of what you need to start chipping away at if you're DIYing. And then optional with that, which you can also do right away with me, again, as a jumping in point, is a website strategy power hour. So that would be us together with that document, looking at your site and actually filling it out just like I do, with my website clients. So those are all just ways to dip your toe in. I'm, of course, always available for a discovery call to get to know someone who is looking for professional help as well.
I love it. Thank you so much, Angelica. This was such a great conversation. And I really feel like, having people who are in the position to put the authentic self out into the universe, out into the metaverse, like it's so important, especially as we were talking about at the end, with the AI stuff coming out. So I do appreciate you coming on and talking about the work that you do. um and everybody, if you want to reach out to her, all the links are going to be in the show notes. And you could definitely reach out to her, like and share this with anybody who you think could actually use some website help, because who doesn't need a little help from time to time.
Mhm.
All
Amen.
right, everybody, thank you so much for watching. Love you guys. Bye.
Bye.